Just as a lot of Republicans decided it's time for Liz Cheney to go, I think that there's fairly widespread sentiment in the Republican Party, shared by me among others, that it's time for Lisa Murkowski to go. Lisa Murkowski has been sort of a thorn in the side of her own party for a while now, and on critical votes like the Trump impeachment, she has sort of sold out the Make America Great Again movement. I'm thrilled that Kelly Tshibaka, who's a prominent figure in Alaska, I think a native-born Alaskan, she was commissioner of the Alaska Department of Administration. She's a serious candidate, and she's jumping into the ring to challenge Lisa Murkowski. Kelly, thank you for waking up a little early in Alaska to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it. By the way, I've been to Alaska, I think twice. I was on a cruise in a bunch of Alaskan ports and got a little peek at Alaska. And then Debbie and I were in Alaska for me to give a talk. I gotta say, it's one place that is so different than the rest of America. It almost feels like you're in some ways on a different planet. Tell us what's unique about Alaska from the point of view of a native Alaskan.
Well, first, it's an honor to be with you today, so thank you. I love our state. It's number one in my heart. But I think the thing that makes us most different from the rest of the United States is we're really dependent on our natural resources up here. We're really driven in our economy by our oil and gas jobs and our mining jobs. That's our predominant source of income. It counts for directly 25% of our jobs in Alaska. That's pretty unique for us versus the other states in the United States.
Now, interestingly, you mentioned to me right before we got on that you have, through your family, a Dartmouth connection. Tell us about that.
I do, and I know that you've got a strong Dartmouth connection as well. My father-in-law grew up in the jungles of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He tells stories about sliding on banana leaves down the mudslides instead of going to school. But he got a USAID scholarship when he was a kid, and he came over and went to Dartmouth. You would think it was funny. They actually thought that Dartmouth would be most similar in its environment to the jungles of Congo. Not sure why. But he actually did his undergrad and his business school degrees both in 6 years. And then he became a banker with Citibank and went all over the world setting up and running Citibank banks. He met my mother-in-law when he was in college. They got married back in the 60s. So they were an interracial couple then. And then I met my husband actually in law school. And you can probably see his picture behind me. We've been married 20 years now and have 5 kids. And it's been one of those wonderful American stories of living the American dream, a lot like your story. And my husband and I have had also just a really incredible story in my father-in-law's footsteps. It's just been amazing.
Now, Kelly, you've worked all over the various departments in the government in Alaska. You've worked in the Postal Service, the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Justice, before you joined the governor's administration. Sort of what is it about your experience in government or outside of government that told you something is a little wrong here and I need to jump in the fray? And in particular, what is it about Lisa Murkowski that said to you that, hey, she's not the best representative for Alaska?
It's a great question. So I'll back up and say, my parents moved to Alaska looking for more opportunity, and they started out pretty poor. For a while, they were even homeless. And my mom got one of those oil and gas jobs that really helped us to climb out of poverty and into the middle class. So similar to my husband's family story, we've lived the American dream and struggled to become middle class. And then I fought to be first in our family to go to college. But just like you said, with my work experience, I got to enter government and look out for the American people. It's what my parents always told me is, who's looking out for us down here? Who's holding these people accountable? Who's holding insiders accountable, exposing waste, fraud, and abuse? What is exactly happening with our taxpayer dollars? Because it's hard when you're trying to work your way up from the bottom and live that American dream. And that's what I was doing in all those federal agencies, is looking out for us American taxpayers and holding them accountable. Well, when you're up here in Alaska, Dinesh, you can see we have more resource than any state in the nation. A lot of people don't know we're over twice the size of Texas. And when you've got this much resource, and you have a population of about 730,000 people in our whole state. But you can see when you're up here that we're living under like economic oppression. So Biden sits there and says that our nation's on the move. We're not. We're on a meltdown. And everything that he's doing with his policies and his executive orders, he's attacking us. And Lisa Murkowski is supporting him. She decided to pick a fight with Donald Trump, but his policies were amazing for our state. He opened us up for economic development and oil and gas jobs. And on day one of his administration, Biden shut us down. But those were the jobs that took my mom and our family out of poverty and into the middle class. Those are the jobs that help Alaskans. And now those are the jobs that are being shut down. And so someone's got to stand up for Alaska. Someone's got to fight for us. And there's a fire in our heart up here to rebuild our state. It's not just me who wants to do it. There's a lot of us who want to do it. So this race isn't really about me. It's about us. We want to take our seat back from the Murkowskis. The Murkowski family has had that seat for 40 years. And her father gave her that seat when he was appointed governor. And we want our seat back because we want it to represent Alaska.
Do you think that in Murkowski's case, having kind of risen up through the establishment, the elevator, you could say, of family connections, that she's more now a product of that establishment, and she perhaps even sees Biden as part of that same establishment? And to that degree, you're running a campaign of, you may say, ordinary people against these elites. Is that an accurate way to describe what's going on?
Absolutely. And I would say Lisa Murkowski has always been a part of the political elite class. When my family was struggling living in a tent over in Rush and Jack Spring Park, her family was living in a house with a pool along the river up in Fairbanks. Nobody lives in a house like that in Alaska. We're the families that struggle with work and grit and determination to make a name for ourselves and to kind of build ourselves up by our boots up here in Alaska. That's what we do. But Lisa Murkowski has never had to do that. She's always had everything handed to her, and she's never had to work for it. But that's not an Alaskan story. Up here, we work for it. She doesn't know what it's like to be an Alaskan. She's always been part of the political elite. And that's the people she votes with. That's the people who give her money. That's the people that she likes to associate with. She even moved into her dad's house on Capitol Hill when he gave her that Senate seat. And that's exactly what we all feel up here in Alaska. And we all know intuitively in America, those are the people who are making the decisions that are leading our nation right down the drain, right? And so we need to take back those seats and those votes, and we need it to represent the people of the United States.
Kelly, as a last question, I've gotten wind of the fact that CNN, which presents itself as a kind of reliable news network, we're trying to tell it like it is, has been actively getting involved in the campaign to go against you, to smear you. Can you talk a little bit about, because I think it's important for people to know how these new news organizations, how they operate on the ground to feed information that they think is damaging to you. Talk about the role of CNN in trying to undermine your campaign.
Sure. In month one of our campaign, CNN decided to operate like a rival candidate or like Lisa Murkowski's personal news organization and decide to do a hit piece on me. But more than that, they started to shop it around to any news source and any blogger here in Alaska that would pick up that news story and run with it. They've never done that before. Fortunately, one of the news organizations up here said, this is weird, and they exposed it and said, news organization that's trying to smear one of our candidates is operating like a rival candidate or opposition piece. And they exposed it for what it is. This is what CNN does. They've even been exposed for this by Project Veritas for taking credit for trying to take out President Trump. This is what they do. They actually have an agenda, and that's not a legitimate news organization. News is supposed to be unbiased and reporting on the truth. Well, because they've been exposed for what they're doing, I think it's actually just given me extra wind in the campaign, because what it shows is Lisa Murkowski is scared. CNN is scared that they're going to lose Lisa Murkowski's vote in the Senate. She sucks up to CNN. She's a shoo-in for the liberals, and she's helping the Biden administration and getting their job done and what they want. And what they want to do is they want to take out Alaska. They want to shut down our oil and gas industry, and they want to push their climate change agenda. And that's what they're all about. And that's what Lisa Murkowski is enabling. And that's what CNN's trying to get done. And so we're trying to stand against that. And what I'd ask is if your viewers and your listeners want to help us, they can at Kelly4AK.com, because you know what? CNN and that liberal machine, they're all funding Lisa Murkowski, and us Alaskans need help at Kelly4AK.com.
Awesome. Well, I urge people to check it out, kellyforak.com. And thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
I'm so honored to be with you. Thank you so much for your time.